Welcome back to the Lost Soul Fishbowl, the podcast where we talk about anything, everything. It's up to you guys. It's up to me. Whatever it is, we're going to talk about it. Thank you for coming back. This is the Awkward Episode 1. Stay tuned. Because they should be investing in themselves. Change that outcome. Come back stronger than ever did. Your soul, your higher power is trying to tell you, and we're meant for a lot more. It's controversial. We've ultimately created for ourselves. It was an art. Ghosts and things in the sky. And I'm going to send him a message and say, hey, that is pretty cool. Let's get deeper into that. Please keep your hands and feet in the vehicle at all times and enjoy the ride. Hey, welcome to the bowl. This is your captain speaking. Thanks for joining us here in the drizzly Pacific Northwest tonight. I've got a special guest for us. But first, let's take a look at some good news, bad news. Let's start off with the good. Okay. Well, you know, it's a lot harder to pull up the internet and look for something that's good. You can pull up any news media outlet, and they're going to tell you the headlines with a spin, of course, but it's all doom and gloom, man. But the good, there's got to be some good, right? Well, I found an article from November 22nd. Here's the title, and this is from WeInspireMovement.org. Okay, the title reads, The Garden Man. Bobby Wilson uses retirement money to feed a community. Sweet. Let me look here. This is by Kina Velasco, a We Inspire journalist. Headlines. Here we go. Here's some bullet points right here. Bobby Wilson has always strived to serve locals through his gardening skills, even taking the time to implement community gardens in drug-infested neighborhoods. Nice. Now an urban agriculture veteran. Sweet. Urban agriculture. Wilson continues to facilitate change, this time through his own community farm. Something he's invested his own retirement money into. Metro Atlanta Urban Farm. Nice. The farm helps marginalized families grow their own produce sustainably, hosts educational events for volunteers, teaches locals the value of healthy eating, meet the solution to food insecurity in the state of Georgia. The Garden Man. The Garden Man, named by his community, better known as Bobby Wilson, who operates the nonprofit Metro Atlanta Urban Farm. During the late 70s and 80s, Bobby would visit drug-infested communities in the Metro Atlanta area to start garden programs. So he's been doing this since the 70s and the 80s. Dude, that is dedication and passion, because I mean, come on, you gotta like what you're doing to do it that long, especially, you know, if it's costing you your own dough, your retirement money of all things. This guy actually cares about his community. He cares about his community. Let's listen to that one more time. I'm gonna say it again. Cares about his community. Wow, I love it. Okay, let's see here. Okay, there's a full. I think it's wonderful. He's got a great story to tell. He's done a lot. He's made something out of nothing, and he's been consistent, and there's a lot of people benefiting from it. I think that's really good news. That's good stuff. If you want to read the full interview with Bobby Wilson, Mr. Garden Man, I will post the link on the episode description, and you guys can check that out. Yeah, that's good news. I like that. All right, what else we got here? Moving on. Ouch. Okay. This isn't a good. I think this is a bad, but it's also kind of good because we're talking about it, right? Here's the headline. Politicians and media are in their latest wave of ascribing young people's mental health problems to anything but their real source, dysfunctional adults. Whoa. Yeah. Politicians and media are in their latest wave of ascribing young people's mental health problems to anything but their real source, dysfunctional adults. That's okay. Yeah, the dangers of social media lend themselves to alarmist headlines, especially when there are high-profile cases of abuse or violence with a social media component. That's why many commentators, advocates, and Congress members are simply blaming teens for their increased stresses and advancing proposals to ban persons under age 16 from social media like Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok. Okay. Yeah, this article is coming on. This article is written by yesmagazine.org. Just pull it up out of the Google headlines here. So there's a big push to ban all these social media apps from basically providing services to kids under 16, which, I mean, it's not a horrible idea, right? But like many policy efforts when it comes to youth, this misses the mark and ignores the real crisis afflicting teenagers. Okay, our society is really good at that, right? We are really good at pointing fingers and blaming a certain thing because it's the easiest thing to blame. Now, I know this article is about social media, but this goes far beyond social media. This goes even farther into like Second Amendment conflicts in our society. You know, for those of you that don't know, I served in the military. I have firsthand knowledge what weapons can do in the hands of people that are skilled to use them. I'm not going to debate that whatsoever. But what I am going to debate is the push to enact tougher gun laws in our country, because it is easier to say, hey, we need to ban guns. Guns are causing all these horrible things, these murders, these mass shootings. Guns are bad. Well, they're not good. I mean, they're an instrument of death. People have them for a reason, whether it's offense, defense, it doesn't matter. They're instruments of death. We got that. That's confirmed. But there are many other instruments of death out there. So instead of trying to, and like I said, pointing the fingers towards the guns is the easiest thing to do, because no one has to really take a hard look at what's behind these crimes, these horrible things that people are doing because of what? Because something's wrong. There's an underlying factor, an underlying condition. There's things that are causing people to do this. And if they want to do it, they're going to do it. Guns are a quick and efficient method, but there are a lot of other things out there that can also do these horrible things. And we can't, a lot of them are already outlawed. If you got a kid making pipe bombs in his living room, that's a problem. But, it doesn't happen as much as mass shootings because they're more available and they're quicker and they're more efficient. And yeah. So back to the article. So we gotta ban this. We gotta ban that because our youth are they're depressed and they're anxious and we need to ban stuff. Okay. I agree with that to an extent, that social media can be addicting and it can have a negative effect on your mental status, especially, and here's the key thing here, if you're already depressed or anxious, I mean, how many of us have sat there at any point in our life, any stage, and sit there and just scrolled before you looked up and went, oh man, like I've been sitting here for half an hour. Like that's a half an hour of your life you can't get back. Maybe you were just trying to zone out or this or that, but I've started in the last year or so, really focusing on that screen time with myself and my kids, because it's not necessarily about the screen time. We got to limit this, we got to limit that, but it's what you're doing productive. Because I sit here in front of the computer and edit audio and manipulate graphics and produce for the podcast, for other things, other projects. I'm producing stuff. So when I sit down and look at social media, it doesn't take me long at all. I'm like, hey, what am I doing? And what could I be doing? I have things to do. I know I have things to do that are productive and can move projects and ideas forward. And there's things that need to be done. There's always stuff to do. So why am I sitting here scrolling through social media? Okay, well, if it's not podcast related, if it's not project related, it's just flipping through and seeing what my closest friends and family are up to. Right. And that really only takes a couple minutes. Like I get on the Facebook and I look at the notifications first, and I look down there for that red number. And I'm pretty much always disappointed. There's like, it says 4 or 5 notifications. I'm like, ooh, 4 or 5. Cool. I wonder if someone commented on my vinyl, because I post a picture of what I'm listening to in the morning and the evening sometimes, because I'm a nerd for vinyl. But I look at it. I'm like, ooh, someone commented on something. And I look at it real quick and it's like, oh, no, just a couple notifications from a couple groups I'm in, blah, blah. Okay. So right there, I'm kind of let down, but it's, whatever. It's fine. It's fine. I can bounce back from that. I promise. I'm thick skinned. It's okay. For those of you listening who are my friends, if you comment on my vinyl, my day is going to be really cool. Just saying. But after that, I move to the feed, right? And I will. And maybe this is why I don't have a lot of comments on stuff, because people do the same thing. That's cool. But they just scroll through their thing real quick, their feed, and go, oh, so-and-so, like, okay, I got stuff to do, and they move on. That's good. That's a good way to do it. But I know there's times where you just scroll, right? Okay, so let's reel it back in. I could go on and on about that. Let's reel it back in. Kids, what have they got to do besides scroll and post and like and heart? What do they got? Oh, they got a lot to do, right? Because they're at an age where they are investing in themselves. At least they should be. There's things for them to be doing. There's homework, there's studying, there's stuff they can do to invest in themselves, because this is the time that they have to invest, right? The time you have to invest in yourself when you get out into the real world is reduced. We know that. It's harder to invest in yourself. It's harder to get to the gym. It's harder to take classes. Why? Because you're paying bills, you're working, you're taking care of your kids who are investing in themselves, hopefully, right? Or are you sitting on the couch scrolling through Facebook? There's a lot of reasons why grown adults shouldn't be on social media 24/7. There's even more and bigger reasons why children should not be on social media, because they should be investing in themselves. And if they have a parent who is not investing in themselves too, it makes it a lot easier for them not to be investing in themselves. So social media is not productive and it's not healthy. So should it be, cut off for younger kids? I'm more of a libertarian in my day to day. You do what you're going to do, and you're ultimately going to do that regardless of what I say or how I feel about it. Making a law that forces people to behave a certain way, I don't believe in it. If you're not hurting me, that's fine. Are you hurting your children? Yes. But if you're intentionally hurting them because you allow them to be who they want to be, because that's a learned behavior from you, getting the legislation to reflect that your kid can't be on TikTok isn't necessarily going to change that outcome. So back to the article, and I know I've spent a little bit longer on this than I thought, but hey, it's fluid, right? We just go with it, and hopefully I can get someone on soon, and we'll maybe do a show about it, the whole thing. About teenage mental health crisis, what is and what is not the cause. Back to the article, they're missing the point. The point is that it starts at home. It doesn't start in the TikTok corporation headquarters. I like that. All right, moving on. how to feel optimistic about the world, according to positive news readers. Let's check this out. I mean, hey, optimism is a hard one right now, right? I mean, you got to get up and you got to like what you're doing. And then beyond that, you got to have faith that the world's not going to come tumbling down around you while you're doing what you like to be doing, right? Here we go. Every time I step outside and see nature around me, I am reminded of the miracle and abundance of life, and I feel hope. That's Michael from Maine. Every time I step outside and see nature around me, I am reminded of the miracle and abundance of life, and I feel hope. Hot damn. Yeah. Yes. I love hiking. I love being out in the woods. You know, we're in the Pacific Northwest. It's beautiful. We're a short distance away from the ocean. We got mountains. We got lakes. We got rivers. Oh, I love it. The sun starts coming out. We just walk in the woods. Got my dog with me. Oh, might even pop my shoes off. Let my feet touch the earth. When's the last time we did that as a grown-up? Honestly, I remember as kids, we used to run around all day long with no shoes on. By the end of the summer, we'd all, get together and be like, hey, I got tank feet. You got tank feet? Yeah, I got tank feet. How tanky are your tank feet? Well, I can run from here to there. Ain't going to cause me any problems. No pain whatsoever. And they take off running. Tank feet all the way. Just over gravel, shards of glass, hot coals. It didn't matter. All right, maybe a little dramatic. But when's the last time you done that as a grown-up? When's the last time you just popped your shoes off and walked on the grass or the soil? That's my favorite right there. You're out in the woods. Yeah, there's some stuff to step on. You step on a stick, but you ain't going to have any needles out there. No needles, no drug paraphernalia. You can walk. Might get poked. Okay, that's fine. But just walk through the soft soil of the forest. All that stuff that's getting returned into the earth from the trees and the plant. You can feel that. The sand is one thing at the beach, but the forest is a good thing. Hug a tree while you're out there. Oh, you dang tree huggers. Oh, yeah, okay. Have you ever hugged a tree? You ever just stood there a minute and just hugged it? I don't know. I thought, and I continue to do it. I admit, I think I can feel energy. I mean, that's a living thing. It's glorious. But hey, when Michael in Maine steps out, every time I step outside and see nature around me, I am reminded of the miracle and abundance of life, and I feel hope. That's an episode. It is a miracle. Okay, that does it for news. Our first guest, Stephen, when we get back. Okay, let me pre-introduce Stephen. He's one of those special people, one of those people that we don't really see very often. We don't get a chance to meet very many of them. At least I have. So I wanted to bring him on because I wanted to pick his brain a little bit. I haven't had a lot of time to really have some good chats with this guy. So without any further ado, let's meet Stephen. Steve.
What's up?
Welcome to the Lost Soul Fishbowl. How are you doing tonight?
Pretty good, man.
Outstanding. Now, you and I have known each other for, 2-3 years now?
Yeah, somewhere around there, man. A couple of years.
Okay. When I first met you, we were scaling the top of a geographical feature here in the Pacific Northwest as part of a hiking group. And I got to tell you, Steve, I said to myself, this guy's weird. and I like him. So he's going to be part of my tribe. I know it. And then sure as snot, we become friends. It was a little slow going. We saw each other a couple more times, talked to each other on Facebook. And then it seems like the last few months or so, we really kind of hit it off. And I got to experience an event that you were hosting, and I had to have you on the podcast because I had so many questions, but the time wasn't, we didn't have a lot of time to get into it. I was fascinated with what I heard and what I saw at this event. And so here we are today. What do I call you, man? Like a spiritual genius, a guy on a magic carpet, like you're somewhere else, man. And what do I call you? What do we call you?
Well, people just call me Steve, but I have been a practicing psychic medium for the last 20 years. It's something that's very tricky. I practice in group readings, and my goal is to connect people with their higher power as they understand it. I come from a background of, basically I was a mess for many years, and I was in a relationship that wasn't taking me anywhere. I had 3 kids that I drug into it. I was very young, and I'd been booted from the army, so life had put me through the ringer for quite some time there. And when I was 27, I had a spiritual experience that, I didn't really believe in anything at all until I was 27. I didn't, as far as spirituality goes, I didn't understand God. I didn't understand religion. I didn't understand evolution. None of it made sense to me. So around 27, I had this, what some people call an awakening or a shamanic experience. I had a vision. I was dreaming while I was awake. It was an amazing experience. And ever since then, I've never looked back. And it was an experience that brought me closer to a higher power that I had to surrender my will to in order to change my life and make sense of what was going on. And the trade was, I had to help other people along the way kind of get an understanding of how to get closer to their higher power. And so with that came visions. With that came a new state of consciousness. People thought I was nuts for the first couple months. I thought I was nuts. I didn't know what was going on. And then, a few months after that, I started telling people what I was seeing about them. And that's when things really got interesting, because I was very accurate about what I was seeing, helping people understand that, there's somebody out there that actually cares about you. And even if you don't know them, I can feel what you're going through. I can see what you're going through. So that's when my voice started talking and letting these people know that they're not alone in their journey. There's something out there that's greater than all of us. There's this higher power that really wants to guide us to something that's bigger than all of us and help us on our journey. I mean, that's the gist of it.
That's a gist. That's a complicated. You said 27. It was the age that this started to what you described as an awakening. You said a shaman experience. Is that?
Yeah, shamanic.
Shamanic. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, okay. So, shamanic experience. The word shaman has been around for a very long time. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, what you're describing has been rooted in the history of humanity for a very long time, in ancient practice, would you say?
Yes.
Okay. Before 27, you were just a regular guy going back into your childhood. You were a regular kid. Did you ever have any indications when you were younger, anything happened to you that was unexplainable, or you maybe just kind of passed over and continued on? Was there any kind of signs when you were a child?
Oh yeah, man. I had a lot of weird stuff happen with me when I was a kid, throughout my childhood. I always had the ability to remember things from an extremely young age, which freaked my family out. I could remember things from when I was months old, and
Wow.
my grandparents thought I was weird. My dad was like, "Yeah, there's no way you can remember this thing." I remember I was probably about not quite 2 years old. I remember this green chrome shifting knob on my grandfather's truck. And I remember telling him about it. I'm like, did you ever used to have a truck that had this green metallic shifting knob on it? And they all just kind of stopped. And I was about 14 at the time that I had this memory. And they stopped and they're like, "Oh my gosh, how can you possibly remember that? It doesn't make any sense. You were way too young." I did have a near-death experience when I was quite young too. I had a heat stroke when I was just a baby. So yeah, I almost checked out, and I came. The doctors had brought me back to life. Pretty much, my grandmother walked into the military hospital in Fort Bragg, and she had me in her hands, and I was pretty much gone. And she had to scream at them to get them to bring me back to life, pretty much. So they got me back to life, and then I carried on from there. But yeah, I've had experiences where I fell asleep, woke up on my neighbor's porch, wondering what the heck I was doing there, beating on their door, at 5:00 in the morning, like, "Hey, let me in," thinking it was my house. But I would wake up in odd places. My parents told me that I sleptwalk a lot and slept talk, and I moved around quite a bit when I was a kid. My dad was a jack of all trades, so I never really made it past a place for a couple of years before we ended up moving and starting over somewhere else, just because it was kind of in our blood. We were just almost like gypsies,
Gypsies,
so,
yeah,
almost like gypsies. But my dad would get a new job. He'd go from entry-level position, make it all the way up to the top. If he couldn't get to the top, he'd get real close. And then, he'd plateau out and decide, well, you know what, let's go try something else. He liked to learn a lot of things. My dad I would say he was addicted to knowledge. So the more skills that he could learn throughout his life, he really put it into force for himself. And unfortunately, we ended up tagging along with him on his journey, but he was a good dad. He still is. He made sure we had everything we needed, regardless of where we were at. And he kind of got in lots of different people, no matter where we were at. He fit in with many people and many different cultures. A
jack of all trades. Literally.
Jack of all trades, and it doesn't matter. Pick a culture, and we've pretty much been around any of them. I can't really say that. It sounds horrible. Any of them, but we were the outsiders, man. We would.
Right.
In Nevada, we hung out with a lot of Latino, Mexican American families, and they were a big family. And we fiested with them, we partied with them, we would put the pig in the ground with them. I learned a lot of stuff when I was about 4 years old. Watched my first chicken get butchered when I was 4. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people can say that they've even witnessed that. So that's definitely a life experience. It's not too common. I had a question for you. Back when you had your near-death experience, you were a baby, but do you remember anything of that when you're basically dead? Was there anything that stuck in your memory? You said that you had memories early on, like the shift knob. And I was just curious, did you have any kind of residual anything from that near-death experience?
I as I go back over the years, when I had my awakening, it's very interesting. Now, I say awakening, shamanic experience. There's a guy on YouTube called Sadhguru. He explains it as it's a Kundalini yoga. That's how he explains it. And he says it's the most potent form of yoga, but it's also the most dangerous because you'll be a stranger in your house in a matter of 2 days. And you'll think that you're losing your mind. So when this happened, I was basically in this altered state of reality. And what was going on was one of the stages that I had to go through was to remember as much as I could in my life. I would have this vision of this giant book popping open, and it was like my book of life. And it would say, do you remember this? Do you remember this? And so, yes, from back then, I was forced to remember, well, I think there was a time in my life when I died, and I wasn't thinking of it as the heat stroke, I wasn't thinking of it as that. But yeah, I remember a dream. Okay. And I was remembering a situation where I was actually in front of this giant figure with wings. So it would have been, an angel, and I was standing at this spot on this cloud, and I was like, I need to get into there. And, I'm trying to get past him. And he's like, no. He points his finger and he's like, you need to go back where you came from right now. So it was like I got turned around by a giant angel. Now later on, I'd come to realize that this was Metatron, which is like a very powerful archangel. And he sent me back. He says, now it's not time for you to come up here yet. That's the memory that I had.
Wow.
It was an intense memory, and it hit me all of a sudden, But now this other thing, my whole life, since the first time that I actually remember doing this was in kindergarten, and I had this vision of this big green orb. Now, it wasn't the same as the shifting orb. It was different. It was a lot of people would compare it to like an aura. I saw a green aura, and it would just hover there, and it would usually happen when my eyes were closed or I was waking up from the morning. And, you wake up and you kind of rub your eyes a little bit and you see these lights. You see phosphenes is what they're called.
Oh, okay.
Phosphonetic hallucinations. But this one never went away. And until it had come and gone. It would come in and then it would stay there, and I would see it while my eyes were closed. So this thing would get bigger and bigger and bigger. And as I'm getting closer to it, it starts to engulf me. So this thing I followed my whole life, usually again in the morning or at night, and I could never figure out what it was. I'm like, it's just it's just pretty colors, pretty pictures, in my head, nothing big. And then 27 came along, and then that's when everything changed, because that green light, it engulfed me and it turned white. And I was standing in infinite white, and then the white had turned to clouds. The clouds separated, and then I saw stars in space, and then I saw every type of religious symbol you could probably think of: pyramids, crosses, ankhs, Jesus, eyeballs, lots of eyeballs, pyramids, tridents, mythological creatures. All this stuff came to me in symbolism, and then numbers. So those are the things that, I think they were things that I was forced to remember somehow. The memory part it's a little rough, but yeah, lots of weird stuff happened to me while I was a kid. I could predict things that happened a lot. With my uncle Mike in particular, if we were ever fishing, I'd be like, yeah, here in about 20 seconds, you're going to catch a fish. And I would do this ridiculous countdown, and he always laughed. He's like, yeah, that's never going to work. And the first time I did it, he brings in about a 4-pound catfish, and he's like, oh my gosh, he's like, that was just luck. You were just goofing around. And every time we went fishing after that, I would do that, and he would catch a fish, or I could pick up when he was going to catch one. I think I just knew his personality or something, and I could pick up on the frequency of the moment, And so, yeah, there was that. I would let him know when he was going to get a call from somebody. I'm like, you're about to get a call from somebody. And my other friends, too, I'd do this with them. And it kind of really freaked them out a little bit, to the point where, like, this is a little too weird. So I would keep friends for a while. But whenever I started getting really close to home with what I was seeing and feeling, I think it scared them away. Like, this is a little too much. But I wasn't even trying. I didn't even, like I said, I didn't believe in the psychic. I thought it was a joke. I'm like, that's funny. It was no big deal to me, but I didn't take it as serious at all. It was kid stuff,
Right. Until 27, when
27, and then
when you couldn't ignore it.
I could not ignore it. At 27, I had a wife and 3 kids, and we had started when I was 20. And we made it a few more years after that. But at 27, I didn't know what the heck was going on with me, man. It was too much. So then when I started actually reading for people, which I didn't even know what reading was, I would walk around and tell people it says this because this new friend of mine, this new universe, it's telling me that, and I'm like, it was kind of creepy, because people were like, what are you talking about? It. And I'm like, well, it. So I'd have a talk with this it one day and figure out what it was. And I said, what exactly do I call you? And it said, I prefer Father. So I started calling it Father, and that meant God to me, So to me, it was God. It would also break down into numerology too, which was 9 and 2, which was 11, and that was like 11 is like a master number, I being 9, T being 2 in numerology. That's 11 to me. 11 is a master number, and it's also parallels. So it was a parallel something that's what I was trying to figure out at the time. That's where it led me, was to numerology. It led me to tarot. It led me to visions, and it led me to Joseph Campbell. Believe it or not, I don't know if you know who Joseph Campbell is.
I don't.
But Joseph Campbell, he was really much into George Lucas. Have you ever heard the term or the saying, follow your bliss?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, that's Joseph Campbell. And he was pretty much an authority figure on very many gods. So he was a theologian, I think. I hope I'm using that term correctly. But he broke down mythology. He would take any story that you ever heard. The hero's journey was one of his strong points. He had a book called Many Masks of God, I think, or The Masks of God. And he got into different cultures' belief structures and each culture's religion, like the Native Americans, Mesopotamians, Egyptians, he would get into the Vikings, how alike they all were and what they actually meant, and the Greek mythology, Dionysus, the goddess of wine, or the god of wine, I think. And I'm not an expert, man. This is all stuff that has come to me. I have not gone to school and cracked the books. I've only been doing readings for about 20 years, and that's my job. I try to help people heal from trauma and grief in their life that they usually have brought on themselves, but I do it with visions, and I can get into their past, their present, their future. I can get into happiness, health, wealth, and spirituality. I tell them what I see. So if I sit down and give somebody a reading, the first thing I do is I'm like, hi, I'm Steve. I have them pick a pretty little gemstone that I give away. I always hand people a stone because, stones are beautiful. They come from the earth, and at first they're kind of rough and ugly, but once you cut them right and you polish them up, they're just gorgeous. And it's kind of like a human. Some of us humans can be pretty rough looking on the outside, but a little bit of spit shine, and man, you might have something really good in front of you,
Absolutely.
And we both come from the earth. So I give them a stone.
Okay.
I tell them, here's your stone. I'm going to tell you what it is that I see for you. And I tell them what I see. I channel visions. Oftentimes, actually very many times in the past, I would bring over a lost loved one of theirs. And that scared me because I couldn't explain it. I would actually see these people and what they look like if I was watching a movie in my head, and I would explain these people to them, and it was pretty right on accurate. I don't know how I'm seeing this, but this is the person, this is the letter of their name that they need to communicate with you and let you know that they have a message for you. So there was that. So that was part of the vision. And then once I tell them what I see for them, I get into their happiness, health, wealth, spirituality, the four paths, in this life. And then I let them ask questions and hopefully give them some sort of confirmation that they are on the right track. That's usually how it works. But
Steve,
yeah, man,
you said 4 paths. What are the 4 paths?
happiness, health, wealth, and spirituality. Those are the 4 paths that I focus on. And these are the things that my guides, or I say my guides, my imaginary friends, if people want to call them that, but these are the energies or the spirit guides that have given me the best 20 years of my life, man.
Wow.
I was literally a wreck. I was so far off my path at 27 that it took an act of God to snap me out of it and get me straight. And my number one best test was to be a better father, to be a good father, because I was really off track for a while.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can relate to being off track. I think maybe humanity as a whole may be a little off track right now. But there's a lot going on in the world, and I know firsthand how that feels to be off track and have the universe telling you that you are off track, and it can manifest in many different ways, whether it's anxiety or depression or general sense of fear. When you're not on track, and the longer you go off track, the worse and worse it gets, because there's no Band-Aid for it. And I think a lot of people possibly self-medicate in order to keep those symptoms down without actually addressing the root cause, which is they're off their path. Now, I'm really grateful that there's people out there like you who are walking a path that is higher than the rest of us, I guess you could say. It's almost like you're resonating at a higher frequency.
Oh, bud, I hear you. And it's difficult too, because it can be like a curse sometimes. I'm like, why me?
But after the awakening, that's when the real work began, because now you have a job, and the universe has said you are now going to fulfill your duty to this universe, and now it's time to do your job. So what did that start to look like for you when you were put on notice that, hey, you are a specific individual, you have a job to do? Where did that lead in the beginning?
It was weird. I remember that experience and actually coming to that realization of, okay, dude, you have a job to do. I was sitting out on my porch on Jackson Street in Roseburg, Oregon. And, I was sitting there contemplating free will. I'm like, well, I'm talking to this amazing thing, I'm like, so if you know everything that's going to happen, because it was showing me stuff coming around the corner, man. I'm like, how did you know that was going to happen? Oh my goodness. There was just so many confirmations that it would tell me, come walk down the street, wait at his street sign and wait for a sign. I want you to wait here for a sign, Steve. And I would wait there and I would wait for a sign, and all of a sudden I'd look across the street and I would see something, like the first thing that I saw that night was, a sign that said pianos. It was a piano shop that sold pianos, and they tuned pianos. And the pianos, I was looking at that, and no sooner than I looked at the piano, I spelled out, please, I am not overnight savior, because I was wondering, how long is this going to take to get me fixed? That was what was going on in my brain. When am I going to be normal? And the pianos, PIANOS, please, I am not overnight savior. That was the first thing that came to my mind, and I was like, holy moly. So that's when I walked back home, sat on my porch. I said, well, if you can see everything coming around the corner, if you see it all, then what's this free will? Because I'm just a human. I said, so if your will be done, then my will be yours. And I didn't even realize that I was surrendering my will. You can see everything that's going to happen, although we do have free will. He's like, yeah, I know the choice you're going to make, but I can see it coming around the corner. So I'm like, well, if your will be done, my will be yours. And then that's when it said to me, so are you saying you want to work for me? And I said, well, I guess so. And he's like, all right, but you're going to have to help some people along the way. And I'm like, okay, let's do this. That's when I realized that whatever I was doing it was so much more than just me. It was beyond me. that I would stop people in the middle of the street and ask them stuff like, hey, I used to do street sessions, man. People would gather around me and I would do cold readings for them all.
Wow.
And I've done that many times, man. I would go around town. The cops, man. The cops, I gained the trust of the cops, man. I was sitting and talk. There was a cop named Monty in Roseburg that I would do this with, talk with him. And if they saw me walking around the streets at 2:00 in the morning, like, oh, he's checking out for clues, dude. He's going to find something, And they would stop me. They shake my hand. Hey, how's it going, man? And they'd be like, okay, do it, man. Do it with this guy. And I'm like, do what? And no. That was it. It was like, do him. Read him. read my partner. I'm like, okay, cool. And I'd read the partner, and I remember one specific time I thought that I was going to be this big psychic and that I was going to go solve these crimes and I was going to go do all this stuff. I was supposed to go find bodies. That's what I thought, like James Van Prague or, who were the other ones? Gail St. John. These are pretty well-known psychics. And I actually worked with Gail St. John just for a little bit. I don't say work with her, but I was vetted by her and a couple of other psychics to go do some footwork and leg work and find some things. But dude, I realized it was serious stuff. And the more that I gotten into it, I just realized, dude, you're supposed to let people know that there is a higher power, because that's when I would realize, I would look in the mirror and I'm like, if I'm savable, there's a lot of people out there that are savable, man. There's a lot of people out there that really need to connect with this higher source, this God, that as they see it. I never told this God, Father has never told me, go to church, Steve. He's never told me, read your Bible, Steve. He never told me, judge people, Steve. He's like, go tell people about me. Go talk to people and let them know that they're not alone, that there's something that's bigger than them looking out for them. That's kind of the gist of it. And so that's what I did, man. I would find people. I was drawn to people. I would go talk to people on the streets. I would talk to people at psychic shops. Trying to talk to somebody at a church is darn near impossible because it's taboo,
Of course.
Unless you call yourself a prophetic seer. And I do not see myself as a prophetic seer. That's just a fancy name. I mean, psychic's a fancy name too, but I prefer psychic channel, psychic medium. And, I still have some friends left. I lost a lot of respect for that. I'm like, now here's the icing is on the cake. Now I'm a madman who's got problems, but.
Oh, watch out for Crazy Steve. Watch out for
Crazy Steve.
He's going to go find some bodies. He's going to go find bodies. He's going to,
right.
Who the heck knows? People were funny when it comes to the things that are not the norm. And I'm fascinated by it. But a lot of people aren't comfortable enough to even acknowledge that there's something else going on in the world that may not be the norm, but it doesn't make it not happening, Right. And so, yeah, I bet you did lose some friends or people talked behind your back. And you had mentioned that you didn't refer to yourself as a prophetic seer just to be able to find place within traditional religion in our society, which I think that's a whole another episode right there.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you. Absolutely, man. I was going to say that absolutely. The worst part about that experience was, well, for one thing, it wasn't the worst part. When I connected at 27, I felt love. I didn't have any questions. There was no worry. I had this amazing hum and this amazing feeling about me, and people saw it. People around me that. This was the worst part. I was making changes in my life and I was really making strides. The people that loved me the most, my friends and my family, they didn't want to have anything to do with that psychic. But let me tell you something else. The people that I was meeting out on the street, all these other strangers, embraced me. They hugged me. They talked with me. They wanted to hear what I had to say. They were in tears. They were crying. They're like, how could you possibly know these things about me? This is unbelievable. I had gained a following from perfect strangers as a a lunatic, right? And my family's like, oh yeah, he's a little bit crazy. And I'm like, okay, so I'm crazy, but philosophies out there focus on this type of experience as a self-help mechanism that's instilled in each one of us as human beings. It's actually there. It's a fight or flight mechanism that when it happens, it's there to heal you. It's a healing mechanism. And I think it's hardwired in all of us. So when you watch this happen to somebody, you don't know what to think. They're like, oh my gosh, man, this dude needs help. I am so very fortunate that I was able to navigate this experience in a way that was beneficial to me and everyone else around me. That was the key. It wasn't just about me, but I'm a family man, and here I'm dragging my family along with this. It cost me my first wife, man. She couldn't handle it. She literally told me, I want the asshole back that I married.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm like, she saw that I was talking to God. She saw that I was making these strides, and it bugged her that I knew things about her.
Yes. And that was threatening, I imagine.
Yeah. And I loved my wife, man. We were horrible to each other for many years. Unfortunately, we didn't know each other very well. And she wanted the asshole back that she married. And I was like, that's never going to happen. I can't do that. Because once you surrender your will to God, you're like, it's kind of like a baptism.
It's not something you can get back.
It's not. It's just not something that you can. I'm like, do you understand that this higher power saved my life? And there is absolutely no way that I'm going to betray it. I every day, even to this day, I talk to Father in the morning and the night throughout the day. And I make sure that I let him know I'm grateful for everything you've given me, in my life. So that was the hardest part, was understanding that, this type of healing, and this happens with a lot with people in addiction recovery. You'll see it. They'll change and their spouse doesn't want to be around them because they've sobered up.
Yes, I've seen that. Yeah.
It's very similar. And like, I was going through this sobering spiritual awakening that was healing me. I was actually healing, and the people closest to you, they don't want to accept the change in you. They're used to the Steve that you used to be. They don't want to see this new Steve because it makes them start questioning themselves. And then
Right.
They can't manipulate this Steve like they could the last Steve. And they can't pull one over on this Steve. They can't use this Steve to their benefit because Steve is awake. Steve is seeing right through them. Steve is seeing who they are instead of who they pretend to be. And that was a problem.
That makes for a fearful conclusion when you see someone's path veering off from where they had been close to your path. And I imagine that they would grasp at straws to try to get that path running parallel with their own again. But you were on the point of no return.
Oh yeah, it was once you see things like that, man. That's the old saying: "I was blind, but now I see." Amazing grace, like
Right.
straight up. I once was blind, but now I see. Like it's that literal. Like I was so blind to who I was and what I was doing. Once I had my first vision, I saw it, and I'm like, it's literally like dying and being born again. So some people say born again Christian. To me, that's pretty much what it was. It's a very similar experience. I actually got baptized not long after that too, in my parents' church, and it was a good experience. I understood what it meant. I've been baptized when I was younger, but this one was different because this one was like, it just made sense. I understood what the Holy Spirit was. I understood the concept of God, sacrifice, the Trinity. I understood in my own way. This is the most important thing. If I could say one thing, this is the most important thing, that this experience is a personal relationship with your higher power. It's a personal relationship with God. It has nothing to do with a building or church. You can be together with a couple friends out by the river fishing, and in that moment, if everybody's enjoying themselves and right in the moment, and you're getting harmony and peace from that, and you're getting talking and you're getting camaraderie, that's church to me. where a few or more are gathered in his name, in God's name. You know, and God to me is so many things. I mean, it's a deep topic, man, and I'm a little
That
bit
is
scattered.
that is a deep topic, and I'm sure we'll have an episode on that, because I have a lot that I would like to say in regards to that with my own personal experiences in my life, and I'm sure there's a lot more people that also have a little something to say when it comes to God and religion. What we as human beings, that there, I heard a saying the other day, did God create us or did we create God? And the longer you sit and think about that question, obviously there is a higher power. There has to be, but we created our version of God based on our own understanding, or possibly the knowledge handed down by a select few, when in fact there's so much more to it. For example, when you went through the awakening, you said what basically amounts to a lot of symbolism with the eyes and the numbers and the stars, and it just, there was a lot of symbolism, and to me it sounded like you were seeing the symbology from every major religion, past and present, on this earth, and it was kind of all coming together for you. Now, for the rest of us, we're, without a guide like yourself, or our own awakening, we're stuck in what we've been taught through our lives. And like you said, I think you mentioned that all the different religions, there's something in common with every one of them. They have their differences, but at the end of the day, their symbology may be different, but the whole core idea is the same. And I think an episode on the religion of our world, past and present, would be a wonderful thing. Maybe we can get a theologian on board to kind of guide us through that conversation. I think that would be an amazing experience for us and everyone that's tuning in. What do you think?
I think so too, man. Yeah, absolutely. What you have to do is, when you have an experience like this, usually you're so far off track that, if you don't have an experience like this, you're usually doing pretty good. That's the way I see it. But with this experience, you have to become a walker between the worlds, because you're living in a fourth dimension. You're living past the veil. And what happens is, it's almost like the Matrix. You remember the Matrix, where they're like, you follow the white rabbit?
Yes.
Just like that, dude. So if this other world is showing me this symbol or this vision, and I'm walking down the street, and then I see that, that says follow the white rabbit, and I'll go walk down the street and I see a white rabbit go by, that's a marker to let me know you're right where you need to be right now. And you keep following those markers. Pretty soon that can get pretty addictive though too, man. So you're constantly looking for stuff. They're tools, man. You come up with your own vocabulary of how to mix what's going on in the cosmos with real time, real reality. And it kind of teaches you how to behave yourself a little bit for the betterment of you and everyone around you. That's the key, to try not to make such a hard go of your life. Or stay on track, as some people say, get back on track and focus on what's right for you and the betterment of you and everyone in your situation.
Yeah, I think humanity we're really good at overcomplicating things.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Well, that's me too, man. Anybody who knows me will tell you, this dude's an overthinker, man. This dude thinks about shit too much, man.
Do you suffer from ongoing bouts of analytic paralysis?
Right. That was one. Yeah, analytic paralysis or sleep paralysis. I remember one time I thought I was sleeping, man, and it was after the awakening. I had to go through these stages, man. There's different stages when you go through this. First thing is, you got to remember everything that happens in your life. Then you got to go through the radical forgiveness phase, man, where you actually have to forgive people without them being there in front of you for things that have gone wrong in your life. I had to go through this forgiveness. And then there was a period where I would see everything outlined with purple out of my left eye and everything outlined with green out of my right eye at the same time. So this is what psychologists would call a psychosis. You know, they're not in a form of reality. And what was weird with me was like most people, if they go into a psychosis or a Kundalini awakening or a Kundalini yoga or a shamanic experience, you know, usually they're on mushrooms or something, you know, but I wasn't on any of that. So the odd part was I was figuring out how to make sense of what I was seeing to everyone around me. And it was working. I wasn't manipulating them. I would tell them what I saw, man. And by the way I expressed myself, they could figure out, holy crap, dude, it wasn't so much this guy's the real deal, but this guy is making sense to me, you know? And that's it. I'm like, don't you wish people were able to make sense to you more often? Don't you wish somebody cared? You know, that was it. They could see that there was so much care in what I was doing because I couldn't just go up and talk to people for me. I'm like, oh, watch what I can do. That wasn't what it was about. I had to get people to understand that somebody out there that doesn't know them gives a shit about. I care about, you know, and something else does too. Let me tell you what I see. You know, this is what I see. And that was it, man. Once I get people to understand that they're important, you're important. You're one of billions of people on this planet that are here for a good reason, even if you don't know what that is, you know. And there are people scientists, usually people who are science, we're just specks of dust in the universe. I'm like, I refuse to believe that. I just don't buy that, man. I don't buy that we're just dust in the wind, you know. I can't see it that way. The thought process and what I've been through is so great that there's just too much evidence for me there, even though I may not be able to prove it to everyone, but I would venture to say in the last 20 years, I've given over 2,000 readings.
Wow.
You know, and it's never been about the money because I haven't made shit for money off of it. You know, it's about the healing journey. For me, it's about the healing experience and helping other people understand how to heal themselves of any pain or trauma that they've gone through in their life. So some people would say, and they've said it, dude, you make a great psychologist, man. You should go to school. And I'm like, I'm not going to school to be a psychologist because it just kind of takes the fun away, man. Then I'm a psychologist, you know, and then they're like having to go see a shrink or a psychologist. And it's like, yeah, it's better when it comes from just a regular person, I think.
Yeah, sometimes. I would agree. That's your role to play. You know, some people's role is to be a psychologist and then have that route. But you're called to a different duty. Thank you for not going to school and becoming a psychologist.
I'm still tempted, man, because, you know, my ego is still there just a little bit. I pretty much destroyed my ego over the years. And it's still there a little bit. It's a tough one to deal with.
It's a tough one. I would like to do an episode on ego death, a whole episode on that. It's something that's fascinating to me. So, you know, if we can make that happen.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been rambling, man. I've been rambling for over an hour or so. I know I'm scatterbrained. I'm random.
Oh, yeah. You're going to have to take a while to recover. But I know you have an event this weekend that you're doing some readings and work. And so I appreciate you taking the time tonight to have this conversation. I know we're going to have a lot more conversations. But until then, Steve, thank you so much for having this chat. And I wish you the best this weekend. And I hope we can talk soon.
Right on, man. I'm looking forward to it, Sean. I appreciate it, brother.
All right. Good, sir. Have a great night and we'll talk to you again.
All right. Later, man.
Okay. That wraps up episode 1. That was awesome. We made it. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the links, become a guest or a co-host on the show. I look forward to sharing episode 2 with you soon.